Hi everyone, I'm Mr. Puckett. Thank you so much for checking out what's only my 9th YouTube video of all time. This is the Story of the Pucketts. Some of you know from watching this channel that these are my two dogs, MrsPuckett and PJ. What you might not know is where my namesake came from, or that I had a best friend for almost 13 years before these two, and his name was Mr. Puckett. He came from some of the worst beginnings imaginable to be known by people all over the world. There he is, right? That's not him. Hey, there's Mr. Puckett. Mr. Puckett was born into an abusive home in Seattle, Washington, where he lived for over a year. When he was finally rescued, he was passed around to different shelters, foster homes, and rescue leagues all over Washington state. No one could seem to get the aggression out of this poor dog. As he was getting close to being slated to be put down, I met him in the summer of 2007. Mr. Puckett was very aggressive when I met him. He bit my girlfriend the first day we were home. He bit any friend that came over to the house, and we needed a lot of help as it seemed like just tender love and care was not going to turn his life around. What he needed, I was not prepared to give him quite yet. But when I finally figured it out, I got to see the transformation for myself. As soon as Mr. Puckett started running and exercising, climbing mountains, and doing everything with me across the country, he turned into the most amazing dog. He ran over 1,000 miles in his life, from mountaintops to ocean sides to desert fronts, anywhere we could go to set him loose to run forever. He then started racing, 5Ks, 10Ks, 25Ks. He even ran 3 marathons and endless runs over 20 miles. He soon became known for that, as you can see in this terrible video taken at a bar in Marquette, Michigan. There he is right there on the news. This was a half marathon that Mr. Puckett ran that no other dog ever had up in the mountains. He had so much fun. Now, as soon as we started running, he turned into a beautiful, loving dog. We traveled all over the country together. Everything we did was together. We moved all across the country multiple times together, lived in 25 different cities and 7 different states, and everything we did, we always did it together. He was my everything. And for a long time there, it felt like he was all I had. Now that included when I had friends, and when I had a home, and when I had a job, but even more so once I lost all 3 of those things. In 2013, a lifelong addiction for me spiraled out of control. I lost my job, I lost my home, I lost my ex-girlfriend at the time. All I had was Mr. Puckett. I ended up in sober camps and homeless shelters, food banks, begging for food on the corner. But many of these places, like the sober camps and homeless shelters, they didn't allow dogs in. So for a long time, we ended up sleeping on sidewalks. We ended up sleeping in homeless encampments under freeways, bus stations, or squatting in condo developments, hoping not to get caught. The only thing we had for real this time was each other. I knew we couldn't go on like this. As much as I needed him, he needed something much better than what I could give him. Through his Facebook page and Craigslist ads, people all over the country watched Mr. Puckett as I got back on my feet. Strangers. I didn't even know what town he was in at some points. Through the next 2 years of homeless shelters, psych wards, and even a stint in jail, I almost never saw my dog, and oftentimes had no idea where he was. 1, 2, 3, 4. After the next 2 years of rehabs, homeless shelters, and even a stint in jail, I finally had my little buddy back. So all I ever wanted was just to hold him again, and as it turns out, every stranger that looked after him was perfect. I was back off the street, I didn't have a place to go, I didn't have a job, I didn't know what I was doing. But luckily my parents came through. At 30 years old, and Mr. Puckett 12, we went to stay on my parents' couch. I worked a couple of jobs that I just hated, but I didn't care. I finally had my little buddy back, and that was the only thing in the world that mattered to me. I eventually saved up enough money to move. Mr. Puckett and I moved to the middle of nowhere, Tennessee to start our life again. It was just me and him. Didn't know a single person in the state. We got to spend every single day together. It was like nothing had changed. Although our living quarters were a little different, a far cry from the skyscraper condos we lived in Seattle, but it was ours. We finally had our own home again. It was about this time he started to get well known on the internet. We started posting wholesome things, and his picture was in every single post. Once that got popular, I started talking more about my struggles in life and everything he and I had been through. He became the face of wholesome memes and all things happy. Thousands of images with his face on them. In that first year, Mr. Puckett was viewed on Imgur more than 25 million times. With that popularity soon came supply drives and fundraisers, a way for us to gather people to give back to all the organizations that helped us so much. And he was the face of it all. In early February of 2020, I started to notice some changes in Mr. Puckett. He wasn't running anymore. He wasn't eating anymore. And at times, he wasn't even standing up straight. The dog who had run 15 miles just the week earlier now couldn't even take care of himself. It all happened so fast. We were in and out of every vet in the area, and I was making these posts updating people as to what was going on until there was only one more post left to make. The day we all said goodbye to Mr. Puckett. He died in mid-February on a vet's table. This is one of the last pictures we ever took together. The day he walked off into the sunset was without a doubt the hardest day of my entire life. Forget the rehabs or the sleeping on the street or even jail, it did not get worse than this. I left the vet all alone with no clue what to do or how to continue my life. All I wanted to do was stop the pain. I felt like I had two routes. I could go get a bottle. I could go get hammered. I could put something in my arm that would make me forget what was going on. Or I could just end all the pain for good. I walked so far that day, I ended up in a town I'd never been to before. I eventually ended up on the corner of this building. The Williamson County Animal Shelter. Oh, I was such a wreck when I walked in there, just bawling my eyes out. They were just closing up, and they could see I was in such distress when I walked in. I begged them, please just let me walk around for a minute. Please, just let me interact with these dogs, and thank God they allowed it. I took one lap around that place, and then I locked eyes with her. That was the day I met my new best friend. Her story sounded too familiar. Born to an abusive owner. Then she got out and wandered the streets, alone in Tennessee, before being rescued again. She was adopted by a neglectful owner who kept her in the garage in a cage because every time she got out, she tried to run away. I didn't blame her for that. Mrs. Puckett
needed love. She needed me a whole lot more than Mr. Puckett ever did. Her anxiety was through the roof. But anytime she was close to me, she was calm, loving, and attentive. We moved to Nashville right away. Everything in that small town reminded me of Mr. Puckett. But it was a big change for her. A dog with that much anxiety and with so much uncertainty in her past, she was terrified of the city at first. All the noises, all the smells, everything made her more anxious at first. But we just kept at it. The only way I knew how to take care of a dog who had had a checkered past was to run them. Mrs. Puckett took to the running right away. She was wildly out of shape, but she had so much fun doing it. We started out slow, a couple of miles a week, and then we picked it up. We did a couple more miles every week. And before I knew it, Mrs. Puckett had run her first half marathon. The anxiety slowly started to slip away. She turned into the most beautifully happy dog that I had ever met, even more than Mr. Puckett. We got so close once we started running. Everything we did together, and she realized she was here to stay. I had it all again. I had a job, I had an apartment, and I had a new best friend in Nashville. Do you remember that line about doors closing and windows opening? I thought my life was set for good. But little did I know, another window was just about to open. Three months into meeting Mrs. Puckett, and everything was going perfectly. We had everything, and we had it all together. Someone posted on the internet a dog that looked quite a bit like Mr. Puckett did at that age. I thought how beautiful that is, that somewhere in the world a dog that looks like him. I messaged the person who posted it to find out. This dog is in a shelter just down the road from me, right here in Nashville. I put it on Twitter, I put it on Snapchat, I said, guys, what do? I don't think I can handle a second dog. What should I do? There was such an outpouring of support, of everybody saying, go meet that dog and give him a new life. I had no intentions of adopting the dog that day. I just wanted to meet one that looked like Mr. Puckett did. He was so tiny and beautiful. The shelter let me take him for a day trip, but again, I wasn't adopting. I just wanted to bust this little guy out of the shelter and hold him for a little while, and maybe even introduce him to Mrs. Puckett. But as soon as he came home and seeing them interact together, I knew I didn't really have a choice. This little guy was part of the family now. The Puckett duo became the Puckett family. There was only one left to do, and that was give him a name. Mr. Puckett Jr. PJ. One of the first pictures they ever took together, and I think it sums up their first couple of months pretty well. Mrs. Puckett felt like an outsider all of a sudden. As if PJ had come in and now she wasn't the most important part of my life anymore. She just wasn't acting like herself. I had to show her every single day that she wasn't just another dog. She was my everything, still. We just added something else to that everything. I'd sneak her extra treats and give her extra hugs and make sure PJ wasn't around for part of the day. It was so tough to raise this dog. He didn't know not to poop in my bed. He didn't know not to eat my shoes. He didn't even know how to climb stairs. He had so much to learn from both of us. So we started adventuring together, all over Nashville. We conquered the scary sounds and smells of downtown. We started exercising as much as PJ's vet would let us, as a family. And that's when I saw the transformation take place. Mrs. Puckett no longer felt like an outsider. PJ no longer felt like just some foster dog. They became brother and sister right before my eyes. And we became a family. We are the Pucketts. This may be the end of the video, but it's just the start of the story. PJ was wheeled around in that stroller for a few months, and as soon as he was full grown, he started running with us. It's now 8 months that we've all been together in each other's lives every day. Everything we do, we still do it together. PJ even ran his first 10K. This is my amazing family. These are the Pucketts.